Hello, hello. How's it going? Welcome. I am talking wine and dine to Dopey. And this is for the runners who just did wine and dine, whether you did the challenge or the half marathon, and you are doing Dopey, the marathon, half marathon at marathon weekend. Now, of course, the information that I'm going to talk about can be translated to the 5K, the 10K, between the two races. But I'm answering specifically wine and dine to Dopey because that's the question I have been getting in the past 24 hours, no less than 10 times between email, DMs, and just conversations I'm seeing, like comments on Instagram and on Facebook. So that's what I'm talking about today. So if that's you, you are in the right place. If you are new here, welcome. I'm Dr. Allie. I am a physical therapist and coach for runDisney runners who want to cross the finish line without feeling broken. So this is somebody who is slow, back of the pack, planning on doing a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I even had a runner do the half marathon at a 19-minute per mile pace this past weekend. So that's who I'm talking to. Or if you are injury prone, coming back from an injury, or just injury averse, you want to avoid the injuries. That's who I'm talking to. I don't help somebody do a sub 3-hour marathon. I don't help somebody do a sub 2-hour half marathon. I'm helping somebody who wants to finish, wants to enjoy the parks afterward, not feel like a hot piece of garbage when they're crossing that finish line. So as I'm going through this, if you are watching live, could you let me know? Can you hear me? I hope you can. Sometimes there's little bits of mic glitches and not connecting. So please let me know. If you are listening to the replay, Wine and Dine just happened. Yesterday was Sunday, October 26th. It was Wine and Dine half marathon. Saturday was the 10K. Friday was the 5K. We have just completed Wine and Dine. I had some serious FOMO. I did not go. I had lots of runners there, and I follow lots of you on Instagram and saw you, all of the images, all of the videos that you were posting, and I had some serious FOMO. So now I might have to just go for marathon weekend to be there. So loved it, just happened. But I've been getting so many questions about, well, what should I do now between Wine and Dine and Dopey? And of course, there are training plans out there. There's the popular training plan that runDisney themselves endorses. That is one way to do it. I personally, professionally find that that training plan is not geared toward the people that tend to flock into my area. So the injury prone, the injury averse, the slow, not really a runner kind of runner. Yes, you may be doing the run walk intervals that they do talk about. That's fine. But the way that training plan is set up is different, and it works for some people. And I have found that it doesn't work for the type of person that I am talking to. So I have developed my own training plans. They are free. They are on my website, dralliept.com. Please feel free to go and download them if you're in this Facebook group or listening to the podcast afterward. If hopefully I can post this, you probably have already downloaded one or more of them. So we are talking about what to do. The things that I want you to avoid are overtraining. So I would rather you be undertrained for the race that you're going into in January than overtrained, especially if you're slow or injury prone, have a history of injuries. I'd rather you be a little bit undertrained, because you hear about things like slow progressive buildup following the 10% rule. Yes, those are accurate. You should do that when you can. And if you plan it out far enough, you can do that every time you train. But stuff happens. Life gets lifey, and we don't always have the perfect ideal scenario. So maybe that's the case you're in right now. Training didn't go as planned for Wine and Dine. You want to make sure it's better, but you may be behind in training technically for the marathon or for Dopey. If you are doing the half marathon, you can get right back on track. That's no problem. For the marathon or Dopey, you may find that you have been behind the 8 ball a little bit. That's okay, but I'd rather you be a little undertrained. So that's why I want to make sure we're talking about this today, because if you set out your training for the next couple of weeks and you A, don't recover from Wine and Dine, and B, go too far in your training for the marathon or Dopey, you could wind up injured. You could wind up miserable on race day. You could wind up that you don't even make it to the starting line, let alone the finish line. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So let's avoid overtraining. So how do we do that? So first off, in these next 2 weeks, take it easy. No running for the next 10 days until next Thursday. So I'm going to look at my calendar here. That would be Thursday, November 6th. No running until then. In the meantime, walk. So you want rest days, you want walking days, and then you want cross-training days. And cross-training may actually be walking for you, and that's perfectly acceptable. So as an example, this week, Monday can be a rest day. Give your body some rest. If you feel like your body would like some movement, go ahead and move around a little bit. But otherwise, take a rest day. Then you want to divvy up walking and cross training. Now, of course, I just said walking may be your cross training, and that's okay. So you're not going to divvy it up. Cross training may be riding the Peloton bike. So for somebody who that is, you want to incorporate Peloton bike and walking. You want to avoid running until next Thursday. The ideal situation is after you do a half marathon or a 2-course challenge or the 5K, 10K, and half marathon, you want to give yourself about 10 days off from running. So that makes it so that you ran yesterday, the half marathon, and now you're not going to run again until at least next Thursday. You could even wait until the following Sunday. But most of my runners are antsy to get running again. So they want to start running. So I go on the earlier end of that. And that's going to be an easy run. Easy 45 minutes. Slow as a turtle. Take your time. So if you're new here, I talk about running in terms of different paces, as in easy, moderate, and hard paces. I don't talk about specific paces. I don't talk about an 11-minute mile, a 19-minute mile. I don't talk about those because each person's pace is individual to them. My easy pace is not going to be your easy pace. My moderate pace is not going to be your moderate pace. My hard pace is not going to be your hard pace. They are individual, and I do recommend testing what your paces are. And I have a whole different conversation, set of instructions for doing that. But I personally go through that myself. I do my pace testing. I also have my clients in Stronger, Faster, Finisher and my one-on-one clients doing that. And so what is your easy pace? Find your easy pace, and that's the easy pace that you run on the long run days and any easy run days. So next Thursday, easy run day. Between now and then, you're taking a couple of rest days. I recommend at least 2 rest days most weeks. Now, of course, things can flip-flop, especially if you're doing Dopey training. You're going to have some more running days or cross-training days in there some weeks. But this next week, 3 45-minute walks, easy pace. excuse me, I shouldn't say easy pace because easy pace is your running pace. A walk at a leisurely pace. Nothing crazy. It doesn't have to be as slow as a safari, like your dog is sniffing every blade of grass, but you want it to be non-exertional. You're doing it to get the movement, to get your muscles to stay loose, to get your joints to not tighten up. You're keeping things easy. Then you're also going to do one cross-training day. That could be spin bike, that could be walking, dealer's choice. Sunday, instead of a long run, so next Sunday, November 2nd, instead of a long run, walk for an hour. So most of my training plans have walking as 45 minutes after a 2-course challenge or a half marathon. But if you're going into the marathon or Dopey, we want that to be longer. So we want it to be 60 minutes. And then next week, we're doing similar as we did this week. 2 rest days, complete rest days. That means nothing. We're not doing yoga. We're not doing Pilates. We're not doing strength training. We're not walking for exercise, and we are not cross training. We're definitely not running. 2 complete rest days, then 2 walks, 1 cross training day, and a 45-minute easy run no sooner than next Thursday. And then you should be ready to get back into training. If you have been following a Wine and Dine to Dopey training plan up until this point, or even just a Dopey training plan, you could hop right back into the long run of 11.77 miles. If you are new here, yes, those are decimal places for the long run. I recommend following the 10% rule, and my training plans literally follow the 10% rule. I literally put all of these trainings into a Google spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and I multiply the previous week by 1.1 to increase it by 10%. So that's why my training plans have seemingly random decimal places in there. 11.77 miles. Do not go to 12 miles. Don't do 11 and a half miles. It is very specific. It is very particular. And then between now and peak long run, you are going to increase your long run by 10% until 20 miles. 20 miles should be your long run, your longest run of the training. I recommend that happen the weekend of December 21st. It's before Christmas, which a lot of people celebrate Christmas. I do understand there are other holidays between now and then that maybe other runners celebrate. I am so sorry I did not include these. I do not know all of the dates of the various holidays. I celebrate Christmas. That happens to be why I put that one, or I talk about that one. Excuse me. It's not on the training plan, but I talk about it, and I was mindful of when that holiday happened and when the majority of school breaks, holiday breaks happen here in the United States. So that's the reasoning for it, but you can adjust your training plans to accommodate different holidays. But I specifically have the 20 miler on my training plans on the weekend of December 21st because that is before that big holiday, okay? That way you don't have to deal with, I have to go on this massive long run for this holiday, because that's a big problem. We're celebrating with families, or we're on school break, or what have you. And it can be really challenging to get into and do the long run. So peak long run is 20 miles. And then that starts your taper. That's when things really ease up. You are doing minimal to no strength training. You are keeping all of your runs easy. You're not doing any speed work. You're gearing up to store your energy for marathon weekend. So that includes marathon, half marathon, or Dopey. Now, of course, if you're doing the half marathon, you're not going up to 20 miles. You know, I recommend 10 miles max for a half marathon or a 2-course challenge. When you're in taper, you are building energy. You are storing your energy. I shouldn't say building. You are storing your energy. So you don't want to overly exert yourself. So longest run, peak run, 20 miles. Then the next week, it's 10 miles. Then the next week, it's 5 miles. That next week, that's January 4th. That's race week for marathon weekend. So max 5 miles for somebody who's doing marathon or Dopey. You could technically even just do, 2.5, 3 miles. That would be perfectly okay. I even have runners who don't run at all that Sunday. That is also okay. Especially marathon week, because there's a lot of packing, there's a lot of driving, there's a lot of flying, traveling. Because if you're doing Dopey, Dopey starts on Thursday. So you may be getting to race, getting to Disney World on Tuesday. Some people even go on Monday. So sometimes you just can't fit the runs in. That is no problem. If you're not going to run any week, I recommend it be the week leading up to race week, the 7 days before race week. That would be the ideal time to not do any running if you couldn't fit it in. So that's no problem. If you do want to get some movement in, I do recommend walking 45 minutes, doing that the Tuesday before of race week. But other than that, you can rest. And then all of the in between, what are we doing? We're doing back-to-back simulation weekends. So if you're doing the Dopey challenge, that's 4 days of activity. Not necessarily 4 days of running, because you could be walking to simulate the 5K. You could be walking to simulate the 10K. You could be walking most, maybe running some, or, and when I say run, I include run-walk intervals as that. So you could be running strictly, or you can be run walking. I incorporate all of those together as running when I say running. You could be doing that for the simulation of the half marathon. And then marathon simulation is the following day, the 4th day. And so you do 30 to 45 minutes of walking to simulate the 5K. Then you do one distance for the 10K, and then double that distance for the half marathon, and then double that distance for the marathon. Or reverse it and base it off of the longest run, which is simulating marathon. So as an example, one of the days is doing a 12.95 mile run. Well, the half marathon would be half of that. So it's 6.47 miles on Saturday. The 10K, half of that, 3.24 miles on Friday. And then the Thursday before that, it's walking 45 minutes. That's how you simulate Dopey. If you've been doing Dopey simulations up until now, you can do them every other weekend or every third weekend between now and Dopey. If you haven't been doing them, I recommend only doing 2, maybe 3 max between now and Dopey. You don't want to overexert yourself. You don't want to overtrain, but you do want to get a feeling of what's it like to do double the distance every next day, every sequential day. Because that's essentially what you're doing in Dopey, right? You have the 5K on Thursday, double that is the 10K, about double that, that's the half marathon, and double that, that's the full marathon. So that's how I simulate Dopey for training. You don't need to do an actual Dopey. I actually advise against doing that. Simulate it. Practice like you play. If you've listened to my podcast episode recently, I had an episode about practice like you play. It doesn't mean do exactly that thing every time you go out for a run. So it doesn't mean do Dopey all 48.6 miles every time you go out for a run. It means that you're simulating what it would be like on race day. So doubling the amount of time you're on your feet, mileage-wise or time-wise, 4 days in a row to simulate what your body's going to feel like on race weekend. And so you're doing that multiple weekends between now and race day. And so we have this week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 11 weeks until race day. There's still plenty of time to train. Remember, I'd rather you be a little undertrained than overtrained. So what happens if you can't get up to the full race distance, 26.2 miles? Great. I don't want you to. Max go 20. You can even go as low as 16 to 18. Now, there is a caveat with that. If you've never done a marathon before, I do recommend getting to 20 miles if you can. There is a big mental piece to it that my runners tell me, hitting 20 miles, especially if you've never done a marathon before. If you are seasoned in marathons and you know what your body is like, go to 16 or 18. Because you know what those last 6, 8, 10 miles are like. You don't have to put all of those miles on your body. Remember when I said it's better to be a little undertrained than overtrained, and I talked about the 10% rule? So the 10% rule, increasing week by week by week, is just that. It's so that you don't overtrain over and over and over again. You don't do too much over and over and over again. You can increase by beyond 10% one time. Make that race weekend. So that's what happens with my clients in Stronger, Faster, Finisher. If they can't get to race distance, we're going to train as best we can, getting as close to race distance as safely as possible before the race. But runDisney has a no refund policy, so use it or lose it. So let's do our best case scenario. Let's get as close as we can with the knowledge that we can increase more than 10% on race weekend. And that's fine. That is no problem, because doing it one time is not going to cause an overuse injury, an overtraining injury, because it happened one time. It becomes a problem when you do it week after week after week, which is why I was saying earlier, if you've already been following a Dopey training plan, you can get into the 11.77 miles that will happen on November 9th. If you haven't, you want to increase slowly from the last distance, the last highest distance before your wine and dine race. That's a little confusing. So you don't want to go 10% more than 13.1, because what if you only went to 6 miles before that race? Well, you want to start at 6 miles and increase by 10% and go from there and do the best that you can. It's not the ideal situation, but if you increase from 13.1 now and increase week over week, well, you made this massive jump from 6 miles to 13.1 miles, literally more than doubled it. And if you keep doing that week over week over week between now and Dopey, that's when an overtraining injury will happen. And so how do we get around that? Well, we supplement with cross training. So doing another activity that works our cardiovascular system, our heart and our lungs, so that we build our heart and our lungs function, our ability to breathe and not breathe too heavy and get our heart to work efficiently without all of the pounding on our knees, our ankles, our hips, our IT band, our Achilles tendon, things like that. So you make up for lost time. Let's say you're supposed to be doing 11.77 miles, but you can only do 6.6 this week. Well, what's the difference between those? About 5 miles. How long does your easy run, or what is your easy run pace? Let's say it's 15 minutes per mile. Multiply that by 5. How long would it take you to run those 5 miles at a 15-minute per mile pace and do that amount of time on the bike? Okay, so 15-minute per mile times 15, 75 minutes. That's an hour 15. So instead of doing an 11.77 mile run, you're doing 6.6, and then you're riding the bike for an hour 15. So now you've done a workout for the amount of time it would have taken you to do that run without all of that pounding on your joints. And that's how you make up for not being able to do all of the running. So between now and Dopey, Wine and Dine and Dopey, these next 2 weeks are rest and recovery weeks. So 2 rest days a week, and then you're doing mostly walking and some light cross training. Start running on Thursday, November 6th. That's a 45-minute easy run. And then you start into your long runs the Sunday, the weekend that includes Sunday, November 9th. And that's 11.77 miles. If you've already been following a marathon or a Dopey training plan, and if you haven't, it's 10% more of whatever your last longest long run was before your half marathon. So whatever your peak week training was, 10% more of that. Make up for it with any cross training right after. In triathlons, they call it a brick workout, where you do running and then you do cycling, or you do swimming as your cross training. Whatever your cross training is, your cross training can be walking, that's fine. And then each week your long run is increasing by 10% until you get to 20 miles the week of December 21st. That is peak long run. That is also the start of your taper, where you are going down and doing easy miles, easy workouts, resting, storing that energy until race week. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you are watching the replay in the Facebook group. Comment below that you watched the replay and what questions you have. If you are listening on the podcast, you can go find this in the Facebook group. Hopefully it's still up. Facebook has changed things and they delete live videos after a certain amount of time. Hopefully it's still up, so you can find me in the Facebook group, make a comment, or DM me runDisney DPT over on Instagram. Can't wait to hear back from you. Thanks so much for listening.